everyone, welcome to the webinar, Fired Up Fundraising, Turn Your Board's Passion into Action. I'm Diana Hands. I'm the Marketing Manager here at GuideStar. A few housekeeping items before we begin. We're going to be live tweeting during today's presentation using the hashtag FiredUp. You'll see it on the bottom of some of the slides in the presentation, so please join us in the conversation on Twitter. Also, we're happy to take questions from all of you during the webinar. We'll try to answer as many as we can, but if we don't get to them, please look for the answers on our Trust blog, trust.guidestar.org, within a few days after the webinar. Finally, we'll send you all an email with a link to Gail's presentation and today's recording within 48 hours. So keep your eyes out for that. I am now happy to introduce the nonprofit philanthropy expert, Gail Perry. She's the author of Fired Up Fundraising and a popular blogger. She's been a consultant for over 25 years, raising money for organizations, and writes articles for a variety of magazines and newsletters, including GuideStars. Gail, welcome.
Hello, Diana. It's great to be here. Shall I take over?
Yeah.
Terrific. Well, listen, everybody listening in, I just want to thank you so much for joining me today, and we are going to rock and roll. We have a bunch to talk about, and I know that I promised you great things in the write-up about this webinar, and I aim to fulfill them all. And what you're going to hear today is a summary of a presentation and a board retreat I give boards all over North America, and boards love this content. So listen carefully to the way I present the material and the stories I tell, and you can find a lot more information on my website at gailperry.com. If you have a particular topic you want to explore more, like the elevator speech or the advice visit, I have articles on my website about those topics, so you can just go to the top corner of gailperry.com and just search. So really explore the material I have today and the resources I have on my blog because I want everybody here to fire up their board and change the world ASAP because it needs changing. So now let me tell you how I got started. This is a somewhat different approach to board members and fundraising. It's more from an organizational and team building, a psychological and motivational approach to dealing with volunteers. And the reason I came to this approach was because I used to be a fundraising consultant who would come in and work with boards, and I would shake my finger and say, "This is what you need to do," and they were not so sure they wanted to do it. And then I realized that I needed to meet them where they were and be honest about where they are and bring them along much slower. I engaged an organizational development shrink to help me come up with these approaches, so that's why they're much more out of the box. They're not traditional fundraising approaches. So tell me what you think. I'd love to know what you think. Now, I came up with a system. If you want to get your board members fired up for fundraising, you have to do three things. First of all, you have to get them fired up to start with. They have to be engaged, excited, ready to go to work, ready to rock and roll, really passionate. And, I sort of think that might be the biggest challenge of all. And if you can get them excited and passionate and fired up, then they're going to be off and running without any fundraising training at all. So step one of my process is the most important, which is fire up your board. And then step two is you got to change their mindset and redefine fundraising into friend making. And I will show you, and I'll give you the data to support it, that friend making is a kinder, gentler, and more successful way to raise money, especially when you're dealing with volunteers. So once you fire them up, then you sort of brainwash everybody and get their minds straightened out on a different approach to fundraising. Then you can give them easy jobs to do to support the fundraising process that don't involve asking. You don't want to start off board members having to ask for money. I'm a trained professional. I've been doing this for 25 years. But a board member, a good-hearted, well-meaning volunteer, doesn't have any experience. And you shouldn't ask them just to go out and do something they're scared of. So let's bring them along slowly. Let's show them how to have some fun. Let's show them how they can change the world and not have to ask for money either and still have a great time doing it. So let's talk about phase one of my three-step process, which is how to fire up your board about the cause. And I have 7 steps, and we're going to take each one of these steps. You can see them on your screen on slide 4. On how to, and I promise you, if you go through these steps, you will have a fired-up board. So the first step is, what is their personal story about why they care about the organization? I would say that the most fundamental discussion question you ever want to have with your board members is, why do you care? And the reason I think that why do you care is such an important question to ask is that it fans the flames of passion within the board member volunteer's heart. You know, they came to this board, wanting to do a good job, wanting to make a difference, and then they got stuck in these business meetings that were dry and boring with no emotion, no energy, and they forget why they care enough to spend their time on this board. So what I do a mingle exercise, and I have it all written up on my blog, and I never do a board retreat without this exercise, and board members love it. And so here's what you do. You ask them to think for a second, why do they care about your organization? And give them a couple of minutes maybe to take some notes. I tell them, I'm going to ask you, so think about what I would ask you, what you would say if I asked you. And just a few sentences, maybe 30 seconds, no longer. And so then I ask them to get up out of their chairs and go, in just a minute, when I say go find another board member and tell them why you care about your organization. And then the other, they're in pairs, and the other board member tells them, that person, why they care. And then I yell loudly, and they go find another board member. And so people pair up again and share why they care. And then after about a minute and a half, I'll yell again, and we do it 4 times. And then I ask them when they're doing this exercise, I tell them it's a messaging exercise. It's a chance for you to practice talking about your cause, and it's a low-pressure, sort of fun way to just practice it. And once it's all over, we sit down and I say, guess what we were doing? And somebody will usually raise their hand and they say, we were doing the elevator speech. And I said, yes, this is a practice for the elevator speech. And so it's really interesting. I asked them what was their experience going around the room talking about this their passion. Usually they're all smiling, they're laughing, their energy is up. And people will say, gosh, I didn't realize so many different stories in the room. I'd never heard these stories from board members before, even though I've known them for years. Somebody else will say, this was really fun. Somebody else would say, this was easy. Somebody else would say, I can do this now. I appreciate the exercise. And it's so funny that we sometimes I think we want to control our board members and we want to talk at them rather than give them hands-on training where they get to play a role. Very different kind of perspective on training people. We know that experiential training is the most important. We know for a fact that board members want fundraising training, and they want hands-on fundraising training that gives them very useful, practical skills. So the things I'm talking about today are useful and practical. They fit the description of what board members are asking for in terms of their training. Although they don't like the word training, they like the word education. So we want to give them education that's practical and hands-on. Now, let's talk some more about the elevator speech, because board members really enjoy this part of this conversation. There are 4 parts to the elevator speech. It's not so much what you say as these other things that are going on. So we do want to work on what we say. We want to be able to say it with clarity, and we want to be succinct. In fact, there's a and we want to be clear. I have a quote from Einstein that if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough, And also, board members love this little quote from Mark Twain. I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one instead, because they find it difficult to cut down what they might say to just a brief bullet or two that has some power and punch. And so we have some laughs about the fact that people tend to be long-winded, and you don't want to you don't want to bore the other person. You don't want to be too long-winded. And so then we talk about, the first part to the elevator speech is what you say. The second part is how you say it. And this is a chance to talk about the energy and the aura of somebody who is on fire and excited and happy. And I ask everybody that do they have a friend whose energy is like the cold, clammy kitchen sink? You know, it's like an energy suck. Do you want to spend Friday evening with them? And everybody says, oh, my gosh, no, you know. And do you have a friend who has warm energy like the sunshine? And everybody nods and smiles. And I said, you want to spend Friday evening with them, don't you? And everybody says, yes. I say, okay, well, if you're a board member and you're nervous and self-conscious about asking for money or being pushy to your friends, where's your energy going to be? It's going to be all shriveled up. And everybody's going to catch it. They're going to feel it. Because studies show that, it's really interesting, I read last week, that emotions are contagious within a group. Emotions within a board meeting, within a family, within a staff, they are contagious. So watch how you're showing up and what kind of energy you're putting out. And I also think that it's really important to consider that that good energy is infectious, and that you can even blather your way through an elevator speech and still be successful if you are excited and happy and you involve that person in a conversation. Because I personally have blathered my way through an elevator speech that was really successful. So, and board members are particularly relieved when they know that they can mess up. Because here's what I find. I find that people think that they need a big-time presentation with a capital P. They need a presentation that will bowl somebody over, that will sell them. And I say to everybody, no, you do not need that kind of presentation. All you need to do is to be brief and charming and be a sneezer. You know, you be the kind of person who spreads when you board members really think this is funny, that if you think about messages as viruses, you know, we talk about viral marketing, things going viral. Well, person-to-person communication is the most trusted and very easy to do these days in the age of digital, the web. So if a board member is a sneezer, they are spreading good news about their organization on everybody that they know, and this news is contagious. So I tell board members, if you don't do anything else, the least you can do is sneeze on everybody you know and invite them to participate. Because here's the thing, the third part to an elevator speech is making yourself stop talking, and invite the other person to speak. And I know it takes great discipline sometimes when you think you punch the button and blah, 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 you're on your presentation, but the goal of the elevator speech maybe isn't the elevator speech at all, it's the elevator conversation. And we know that if you do all the talking, you will never get anybody excited about your cause. They will sit there and they will be passive and they will nod their heads and they'll smile and they'll go, isn't that nice? But if you get them talking and ask them what their experience is about the issue, they will all of a sudden they will talk themselves into being interested. Because when somebody's brain is working on an issue, it lights up and it fans the flame of emotion, and before you know it, you've got somebody who's interested. So, you know, for example, if you're on the board of a local dance company, and I used to be on the board of our Carolina Ballet in North Carolina, and, you know, if I was telling somebody about the ballet, I needed to stop and let them tell me how they loved ballet when they were a little girl, and their mother took them to the Nutcracker, and all of a sudden she's getting all misty-eyed, remembering her love for this thing, and then I can say to her, the fourth step in the elevator speech, I'll say, let me take you on a backstage tour, or I've got an extra ticket to the ballet, would you like to come? It's some sort of request to follow up. And this is really important, because then you're taking the elevator speech from just blathering into the void, you know, a speech. You're taking it into a conversation, and then you're taking it into reaching out your hand to a friend or a colleague and putting them on the bandwagon to your cause. And that's the first step to raising money, isn't it? So here we have in this little this little elevated speech exercise, which I really take about an hour for, maybe 45 minutes for in my board retreats, because we go into a lot of detail on all these points, which I'm not going to do today. But here we have a way for a board member volunteer to get the door open in a conversation with somebody without being pushy. Because we do not want to ask our board members to be pushy. We never want to ask them to monetize their friends, never. But what we do want to ask them to do is to sneeze on everybody they know, the infectious good news of rocking and rolling this cause. I'm so excited. Come join us. And here's the thing. Let me tell you another Carolina Ballet story. We had a new artistic director from Philadelphia, Ricky Weiss, who came down to Raleigh, and everybody's so excited. He was the hot new artistic person in town. And as a board member, I had a porch party for him, just a porch party. And I didn't think much of it. I invited 60 people. And, porch parties are easy because you don't really have to clean your house that well. You just do the porch and the bathroom maybe. I like to have a lot of parties. I don't know if you follow my blog, but I talk a lot about parties. But I had a porch party, and 60 people were invited, and 30 people came, and 30 people couldn't come. The people who could not come, almost to a person, said, "Gosh, I'm so sorry I couldn't come. I would have liked to have." And the people who could come, from that group, we got one major new donor and the future chair of our board. So, and all I was doing was just having a little party, meet and greet, no pressure, no ask, no nothing. So when you're having this conversation with your board, if you want to set up this discussion, break your board members into small groups or teams and ask them, what kind of follow-up requests can we come up with if we were sneezing on somebody, invited them into a conversation, they were interested, what kinds of things would we have to offer them? Lots of organizations say if I can just get somebody on site, we have them forever. And so maybe you need to go on an all-out push to just drag people over there to your facility so they can see the great work you do. But it's a really generative, productive, creative conversation to cluster board members together and ask them about what kind of follow-up requests we could come up with. Now, here's a slide on slide 13. My friend Lori Taylor of the Lower Cape Fear Hospice in Wilmington, North Carolina, she tried, we're talking a lot, the very first question in this little nugget of information is, why do you care about your organization? She used a different question. She said, what legacy do you want to leave from serving on this board? And Lori wrote me and she said, well, you would have thought I'd opened the floodgates. She said that a couple of men cried, and she said it turned out to be the best meeting they had had in 3 years. In 3 years, best meeting, just because she awakened their hearts for the cause. And she said at the end of the letter, she said that I can't change them, but I can change me. And so my friends and colleagues listening, this is the theme of what I'm saying to you, is that if you change yourself, if you change your approach, you can get different results. It goes with families, it goes with staff, it goes with your children, and it goes with board members. So we can come up with more creative, more fun, kinder, gentler ways, and we will get so much more out of our board members. And just one more point about this that I think is really interesting. I was talking yesterday, I had a meeting, a visit with organizational development shrink that I hired to coach me on all these areas years ago before I wrote my book. And you can find all this written up in my book, Fired Up Fundraising, on Amazon and AFP. But he was saying that if you've got a board that's dysfunctional and disengaged and they're demoralized, if you've got a demoralized board, you can't just have a business meeting. You've got to create something that gets them emotional, because it's emotion that will breed action. Emotion breeds action. Logic breeds conclusions. So if you want to get your board active, you've got to find some ways to add emotion into your board meeting. So let me go on to step 2. And I've spent the most time on step 1 of this entire presentation because it is the most important. That whole nugget in step 1, why do you care? It's got multiple teaching objectives, and it's hands-on, as I said before, and it's everybody needs practice with short messaging about their cause. And we can refine it, and we can make it better. And I myself, I'm on a couple of boards, and I hate to think if I had 30 seconds, if I could really come up with what I would be proud of. And probably not. So let's go to step 2. Step 2, how do you fire up your board? And this is a very interesting discussion. And again, it's a discussion. It's not a one-way presentation, my friends. You cannot do this with the PowerPoint. Where does our money go? Why do we need to raise money? And let me tell you how I set up this conversation. I set up a panel discussion. And let me show you what I'll tell you a story. I was working with an independent school in High Point, North Carolina, and I pulled up the headmaster, the athletic director, and the the development director. And I think I might have had the head of the board of trustees. And what I was doing, I was training the parents they were volunteers, and they were going to go raise $30,000 for the parents' fund, part of the annual fund. They was the parent, and my sister and her husband were in the audience. All these people were in the audience, and my job was to help them get fired up so that they could go out and raise that money. And so I interviewed everybody. I said, well, why do we need to raise extra money? Doesn't the tuition cover our costs? And so the headmaster responded. And I said, well, why do we need scholarships? Why are they important? This is a really exclusive, nice school. And so we had a long conversation about the importance of diversity in today's globally shrinking world. And I said to the athletic director, well, why do we need to raise money for uniforms? And he's sitting over there saying, well, the scholarship kids literally don't have the money to buy the uniforms. And the parents are taking notes. They are taking notes. And then I said, well, why do we have to pay our teachers a supplemental salary? And so it turns out that the teachers are paid less than the public school teachers. And then I said, well, why would a teacher choose to work here? These are all very powerful questions. Now, you can make this presentation to your board members and leave them passive. But if you set it up as a discussion, it has more power and it has more impact, and you can invite participation. It's amazing. I got this idea from the AFP Faculty Training Academy. I'm very big in the Association of Fundraising Professionals. Highly recommend that group. So try a panel discussion, and you can find some articles about that on my website, but I'm going to go on. But I would say these first 2 conversations, if done well, you don't even need any fundraising training. And one more story about this conversation. I was working with a hospital in Montreal, and I was asking the president of the hospital, why do we need this $1 million new piece of equipment? And he said, well, I'm worried about outcomes because we have to ambulance people across town for this test. And do you know what happened at the break? One of the board members came up to the CEO of the hospital during the break and said, I think I know where we can get that $1 million. Now, is that not powerful? And I got to tell you one more story quickly, and I know I'm going to not finish this slide presentation, but I was working with the Boys and Girls Club in Dallas, and I interviewed 2 kids, high school kids, who were members of the Boys and Girls Club. And I said, well, tell me what it's like to be a member of the Boys and Girls Club. I'm just doing, tell me your story. And by the way, if you want to bring a kid or a client into your board to do a testimonial, try interviewing them, because you can make it more interesting. You can keep them on topic. You can pull out the kinds of points you really want to make, and it's less pressure for them. I think an interview is much, much easier on everybody in that situation. So anyway, this young Hispanic girl in Dallas reveals to everybody that she has been coming to the Boys and Girls Club since she was a kid, and it's been a wonderful place for her to come after school. And do you know, she suddenly started crying and said she and her mother had lost their home. And all these people in the Boys and Girls Club, and everybody's heart is breaking. And at the break, the board members themselves independently create a fund for emergency use for their Boys and Girls Club members. So you can see what kind of powerful results you would get if you stage a discussion like this. So let me go on to step 3 out of my 7 steps to get your board fired up. The number 3 is what we call a mission moment. And here's some volunteers for Habitat for Humanity, another one of my favorite clients. Give board members a direct personal experience. Take them on field trips. Get them out of the board meeting. In fact, you could probably do a whole lot more for your organization if the next board meeting you canceled and you took them on a field trip instead. You get more attendance, and you would emerge with happier board members who were ready to go to work. Give it a try. Now, let me, I hyperventilate a lot about boards, and I say this as a board member who has suffered and still suffers from boring meetings and diddly-piddly work that's asked of me. Now, is this your board? This statue, this picture of Egyptian statues, the board members love this picture, and they laugh because, here's the thing. We are all so self-conscious around the board table, and it inhibits creativity, and it inhibits, I think, true work. We need to make the Egyptian statues into a board where people are rocking and rolling, ready to go to work. And that's a psychological issue, because too many boards have this problem. After all is said and done, more is said than done. Isn't that right? That's good old Aesop nailed it way back. But here's a quote from Jack Welch, and the business people board members love this quote. And he said, if the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is near. So, you can make the case that the bridge is burning. The barn is burning down. And if your board members are sitting in the meeting with a boring agenda and they're twiddling their thumbs trying to decide whether they need to make a new hire or invest in this or that without dealing with the bigger picture, you are really missing the boat. And they're unhappy. Because if you have boring meetings, you're going to have a bored board. And will a bored board get excited about fundraising and take action? No. Hold on one second. I'm hyperventilating here. My throat is dry. But I mean, it's amazing how boring the meetings are, and it's a shame because they make your board so passive. They treat board members like they're fourth graders, and it is disrespectful to the smart people around the room. And you cannot get a community mover and shaker to come to a meeting. They simply won't come, because they've got better things to do with their time. And so I would say to you, blow up the agenda and liven up your board meetings. And I'm going to give you quickly 12 ways to liven up your board meetings. I do a lot of articles for GuideStar, their e-newsletter, and I think I wrote this into an article. If you can't find it on the GuideStar website, you can definitely find it on my website, because it was a very popular blog post. And by the way, my site, I have a newsletter that goes out every Friday morning with one article, and the article has about 800 words, so it's a quick read. And people love, try to make the article interesting and snappy. And so if you are interested in maintaining a connection and getting more of my perspective on boards and especially major gift fundraising, sign up. You can sign up in the upper right-hand corner of my website just for the newsletter. And, I won't bother you. I'll just send it to you, because I'm trying to help everybody do a better job. So the 12 ways to liven up your board meeting. I think that you need to look at the bigger picture. And I think you need to turn your board meeting into a cheerleading session. Or maybe you have the business meeting here and then you have your cheerleading session over here. And let me tell you a story. I'm chair of the board governance committee of a statewide organization in North Carolina. It's interesting that they wanted me to do the board governance committee and not the fundraising committee. Very interesting. And the executive committee got me on the phone last night, and they said, Gail, we have a problem. We have really got to galvanize our board members. They're asleep. They're not active enough. What can you do? Can you set up and facilitate an exercise and a discussion for them so that they will emerge more excited? And I said, yeah. And first thing I did, of course, was to call Dr. Thomas Griggs, my organizational guru, and I said, Thomas, what would you do? And Thomas said, and I haven't written this down because this came out of his mouth last night. He said 3 things. The first thing is, if they are demoralized, there is a reason, and they've got to throw up about it. He said, you've got to create emotion. If you're going to get them excited again, you've got to let emotion. You can't have a business meeting, like I said earlier. He said, so stage a conversation about what's at stake and how they feel about what has happened. and let them get really, really upset about it. And then have a conversation about and I'm going to do this in 2 by 2, by the way. I'm not going to do it in a big group. 2 by 2, I think that's far more effective. It forces everybody to talk, and so that nobody can be quiet and passive. And then we're going to talk about what is my commitment to making a difference. What can I do in the next 3 months for this cause? So I'm going to work up some sort of facilitated exercises so that people are participating, so that emotions are touched upon, and so that we all get to, as a board, say, if it's to be, it's up to me. So, you can do this too with your board, but get rid of the boring agenda. Do something different. And one of the things I really like is number 8, interview the executive director. I like to ask my executive director what keeps her up at night. And I would bet that this is not on the agenda, is it? It may be an elephant in the room that's nobody wants to talk about or nobody knows how to talk about, and it's not on the agenda. And Rome is burning, and here we are diddling around with trivial stuff. And so one organization I learned about has a fireside chat with the executive director before the formal agenda. And we're just chatting and talking with the executive director about what's going on and what they see. So very powerful tool to create buy-in and create more interested board members. And one more, number 9, set up one interesting item for discussion. A friend of mine, Chick Dombach, was CEO of the National Alliance for Peace Building, an international organization, and he would make sure that every board meeting he had, there was one discussion topic so that board members could feel like they had a chance to really chew on something meaningful and deal with something meaningful. Now, number 5 in my list of the 7 steps to fire up your board, give board members what they want. And this is some interesting research that came from June Bradham of Corporate Development in Charleston, North Carolina. She's CEO of a consulting company. She interviewed board members all over the world, actually. And they said they want to get their hands dirty. They want to get down in the street with a little girl who needs some help. They want to have that experience. And they want to work with other people who are as passionate and as excited as they are. And that means if you've got some people who are not passionately excited, you need to pull out the old term limits, because you got to rotate those folks out, because the old culture of being half dead and not engaged is going to infect the new people real fast. So that's a problem. Now, board members want to feel that their time is used wisely, and that means that the discussions at the board meetings are worth participating in, the board meetings are worth attending, and they are enjoyable, and that they don't go on forever. And they also want to meet the other board members. June found, this is amazing, that you will love this. You need to write this down. I hope if you can take some notes, that the number 1 factor that impacts whether somebody joins a nonprofit board, you won't believe what that is. It's who else is on that board. Who else is on the board? Because board members, if I loved animals and wanted to help maybe the SPCA or the Animal Prevention Society or one of those two, I would see who the board members were. And if I wanted to meet with them, if I wanted to work with them, if I wanted to be with them, does one board have a reputation for being deadbeat? Does one board have a reputation for fun? I'll pick the one where I want to be. So just consider that. Now, number 6 on my list of 7 things. My friends, my favorite fundraising motto is, when in doubt, throw a party. When in doubt, throw a party. And the reason I think this is so important is that if you can make things fun, you will attract people to your cause. There's nothing that says that charity work has to be boring or dreary. You've got to make it alive. And so if you can provide social time with your board members, you will reap untold results. And here's why. Because social time for board members builds trust. It builds personal relationships, and it builds collegiality. It builds friendliness. And the thing is that a group of people cannot run an organization if they don't know each other. They've got to feel like they're a team. So if you've got people who don't know each other, they're going to be self-conscious. They're going to be afraid to ask the questions that they probably ought to be asking because they're more concerned with decorum and self-preservation than they are the work at hand. So really, and this is an interesting idea. You probably read this book years ago, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. But the number one dysfunction of a team is lack of trust. And the number 2 dysfunction is fear of conflict. So if you applied these ideas to your board, you could see where you rate. And it might be interesting to simply print out the slide and put it on your agenda item and say, what are your impressions of these ideas? Where do we fall? Very interesting conversation, I think. And there's this whole thing of group process. There's this hidden stuff going on inside a board meeting, like who's paid attention to, who's ignored, who can interrupt and who can't. Who smiles and the meeting's over. All this group process stuff is going on, and I wish I'd studied sociology in college because I would have learned a little bit more about group process. But I got a little flack for this. I wrote a blog post on this, and some people said I was not being nice. But I do think that the number one motivator for volunteers is peer pressure, because I'll tell you what, and this is my own perspective. If I know I've got a report in front of my peers next Saturday morning at the board member meeting, you better believe I'm going to make sure I have my work done. I am not going to embarrass myself. And so, listen, it is, and board members want to look good in front of the other people. Of course they do. So just remember that praising good behavior in front of board members is a wonderful motivator, and asking people to report on their progress is a great motivator, but be sure you're going to tell them that you're going to ask them to report before the board meeting so they have time to get their work done. Now, my last of the 7 ways to fire up your board is focus your board on action items. I don't know about you, but if I'm on a board, I want to know what they need me to do. And I don't want to have to think about what they need to do. I want somebody to say, okay, Gail, you need to make these 3 phone calls in the next month. Can you do that or not? Make it clear to me what you need me to do and give me something to do. Don't make me think that my job is to just come into a meeting and pontificate and leave, because I don't have any use for people who think that their job is to come in and talk and leave. I want to see people who want to change the world. So, make it clear to them what their job is right now, what you need them to do, and what each individual person needs to do. And also, I firmly believe in the rule of 3. And the rule of 3 is don't give people more than 3 things to do at once. Because, this is my experience I'm sharing this. If I had a list of 11 things from my board work, I would think, oh my gosh, I'm going to put that aside till I have time to get to it. And I would never get to it because it seems like it's so much. So if you just give them 3 things, that's very doable. Keep it simple, keep it quick, and then once somebody finishes 3, then you can give them some more things to do. So those are my 7 steps to a fired-up board. I would love to hear your thoughts about it and your responses to this webinar. You can write some comments on my website because I have lots of places for you to post. So give me some feedback and let me know if you try any of these things, if you do them right now, or what has worked and what's working for you. So let's go to phase 2. Now, remember, I told you we needed to spend more time in phase 1 because that's the most important. If we can get our board members fired up, everything is possible. We can change the world. We can't with bored people hanging around a table falling asleep. So here's what happens when fundraising comes up. Board members think the F word is fundraising. And you probably have deer wherever you are listening. They're deer. And the board members are like the deer in headlights. Oh, my gosh. You want me to do what? I didn't sign up for this, poor board members. And I don't blame them, to have this thrust upon them. And so here's the problem, because so many board members have a myth that fundraising is begging. It's the tin cup. This is what board members think. Most people who are not familiar with fundraising are making up these myths. And, I used to have these myths before I became a fundraising professional, and I show slides to board members when I'm training them, and they laugh because you want to poke fun. You want to poke fun at all these myths and make it okay, and make it playful. If you notice, I'm deliberately lightening up. I'm not a heavy, you can tell, because I think sometimes I worry that I make too light of fundraising. But I think it's important to make it seem not so scary and very doable. And, a lot of people think fundraising equals asking strangers for money. They think it's all about asking. They think it's all about strangers, cold calls, and they think it's all about money. And I would say to you, it's not about any of those things. It's not about rejection. It's the difference between. It's so funny. You can think about fundraising, and it can be the most noble activity a human being ever embarked upon, trying to help another human being. We are trying to take supplies to a school in Honduras. These children are naked. They need some clothes. We extend our hand. That is the noblest calling of another human being, right? Or you could think that fundraising is begging. It's rejection. It's one of the lowest things a human being can do is to ask other people for money. And it's the same activity. And it's all where you're standing. You can make it high and mighty or lofty, or you can make it down in the gutter and a yucky experience. It's up to you. That's why I think mindset is so important. And that's why I think all these concepts I'm playing around with for you today reposition the idea of fundraising into your board member's mind from a different perspective. So I let people throw up a little bit about fundraising, and I admit to them that there is a dark side. And, the dark side is I ask them, how do you really feel about asking for money? I try to stage a question that will definitely get people to throw up. I'm trying to elicit the yuckiness. And people say, oh, my friends are going to reject me, and it feels so tacky, and it's not appropriate. And, my mother taught me that talking about other people's money was bad manners, growing up in the South. And she would be horrified to know that I've spent my entire career talking about other people's money. But, we don't have to tell her. But, you do let people talk honestly about the dark side of fundraising. And, when fundraising is this bad, you know what it is? It's all about money. This conversation is a money conversation. Now, ask your board members how they felt the last time they gave to their favorite cause. How did they feel? And you'll get passionate, joyful, powerful, happy, glad to do it, wish I could do more. And these are very, very proud, very positive, Maslow's scale of human needs. These are way at the top. So, you could be down in the gutter thinking it's all about money, or you could be joyful, bringing joy to the donor's heart about the good work they have done in the world. And so here's the difference. You have volunteers who are all closed up and clammy, and they're scared to death of the F word, and then you've got donors who are joyful. And it's so funny when I make this presentation to board members, about this time their faces start to change. They're starting to get it from a different point of view. And so, the dark side and the joyful side of fundraising, it's either all about money or it's all about changing the world, one or the other. And you can choose which you want it to be. Now, I'm going to throw out a revolutionary idea to you, one that could have gotten me probably thrown out of the fundraising world about 10 years ago, but now I think people are coming around. I would say to you right now, let's see, we've got 851 people listening right now today. I would rather have a friend to my organization than a donor. I would rather have a friend than a donor. Now, what will friends do for you? What will they do for your organization? I love this slide. They say you're supposed to throw a funny slide in your slide deck, so this is supposed to be funny. But friends are loyal, no matter what. Won't they be loyal? Even if you're getting bad-mouthed in the press, even if you're losing board members or whatever is happening, losing grants, your friends will be loyal. And And when the going is tough, if you have friends and your strongest friends of your organization, where are they going to be? They're going to be right there with you. You know, if you can convert your donors to friends, you will be far better off. What you want is passionate supporters who will do anything in the world for your cause. Isn't that what you want? Passionate supporters. And in fact, I will say to you unequivocally that the number one secret to good fundraising is to get your supporters as passionate about the cause as you are. Get your donors, your supporters, your friends, your organization's bandwagon as passionate as you are, and you can change the world and you can raise all the money in the world. So, if you redefine fundraising into friend-making, everything is more fun. And we have a dirty little secret in the fundraising world. It's called donor attrition. And what is donor attrition? It's the fact that we are losing our donors. You know, the renewal rates across the board, if I'm a first-time donors, the average renewal rate is only 40%. We are losing more than 50% of our first-time donors. Now, you tell me what kind of business could stay in business if it lost 50% of its new customers every year. We are barking up the wrong tree. Everybody thinks we need more donors. We need to we need to prospect for new people. And I would say to you, we don't need new donors at all. We need to keep the donors we have, and we need to bump up the donors we have to higher levels. Penelope Burt, the great fundraising researcher, says that you can raise more money with fewer donors because you can have the time to give the attention to the donors you have, and you can connect them with the cause. In fact, my blog article next Friday morning in a couple of days is going to be a new topic I want to get the fundraising world talking about, and the title of it is Why You Need a Donor Communications Program. A donor communications program. What kind of plan or strategy do you have to talk to your donors in between solicitations? Because it's the quality of this communication that determines whether or not they're going to give again. So we have a huge opportunity in front of us, and the reason I'm bringing this up in this call is that board members can play a role in tackling our current donors, and as we say in the South, they can love on them a little bit. You know, I'm going to love on you. I love that phrase. But board members can get involved. And here's some data about attrition that the AFP came up with last summer, that for on the average, the money was up $5.35, but we lost $5.54 through attrition. We lost more money than we gained. It's just amazing. It's very scary. And Penelope Burt found that donors would give again if they got three things from your organization. If they got a prompt personal thank you, if they got meaningful information on the impact their money made, and assurance that the money was used as intended. If you can do those three things, 93% of the donors in her surveys have said that they would give again. So here, my friends, is the recipe for successful fundraising. Right here. And we could do an entire hour. I wish I had an hour just to talk about this slide, because we could dissect. By the way, the prompt personal thank you note, I have an article that came out in December, How to Write a Killer Thank You Letter, with a list of thank you letter do's and don'ts. And it was my first big blog article to be picked up by The Agitator, who is the big fundraising blogger, and I was very proud of myself finally. But anyway, that article's been tweeted like almost 200 times, but definitely print it out, and you'll find a very step-by-step how-to in terms of creating the right kind of thank you letter that makes your donor feel warm and fuzzy, not cold and lofty. Now, one other point from Penelope Burt that's so important, and this might be the most important slide I have to show you today. This is a test that Penelope Burt has run repeatedly, trying to figure out what kind of impact board members might have on a donor's renewal gifts. So in this study, they had board members make thank you phone calls within 24 hours of the gift being received, and that's a really short time frame, 24 hours, you know. And they took 1 out of every 10 gifts for the board members to make these calls. And then 5 months later, they resolicited both groups. The people who received the thank you from the board member gave 39% more money. 39% more money. And so here, my friends, here is proof, statistical evidence, that board members can directly impact the bottom line without having to ask for money. All they have to do is say thank you. So friend making does work. You know, this stuff does work. So give it to your board members and let them go at it. I have an article about this that explains the statistics, so that I think board members will not do this work if they don't know the stats. So show them the article behind, the stats behind this. Now, this is really interesting. The steps in the fundraising adventure. You know, this is the sales cycle. If you know anything about sales, we identify prospects, we cultivate and involve them, we ask them when they're ready, and then we thank. We want to find 7 ways to thank our donors. Now, I try to figure out how much time and energy we spend in all these different segments of our fundraising cycle. And, you know, we don't spend that much time actually asking. So if board members are nervous about asking, they can do lots of other things. They can help identify, they can thank, they can involve, they can host tours, they can do porch parties. You know, these are the kinds of things that board members can do. If they are confident asking, get them out there asking, but everybody does not have to do it. They wouldn't be good at it, and you wouldn't be happy with the job they were doing. Now, let's move on to phase 3 of my Fired Up system. You know, first we got our board members fired up, then we redefined fundraising into friend making, and we talked about attitude and mindset and donor attrition. Now let's talk about easy jobs that we can put board members to do. First of all, this is a game I play called the VIP prospect game, and I tell board members to pull out a sheet of paper. They do not have to turn this sheet of paper in. And just write a list. See if you can write a list of 5 or 10 people who could catapult your organization's financial future. Who would that be? And then I give them a while to do this, and then I ask them to turn to somebody, the next person next to them, and discuss one of the names on either one of their lists. And what we are doing is that we are introducing board members in a low-pressure way how to get involved, how to start identifying prospects, and the discussion with their colleague sitting next to them, how to talk about strategy with prospects. And board members love this. After we do this in a retreat, we'll usually form a VIP prospect task force to work together on this. Great, lots of fun, very generative conversation. You know, and board members can make advice visits, because we know that if you want money, ask for advice, and if you want advice, ask for money. And advice, I don't have time to talk about advice visits today, but they are a tried and true, one of my favorite tools for fundraising. And you can find out more on my blog if you read those articles. And, you know, there are rules for a successful advice visit. Let the other person do the talking, because if you do all the talking, you will be boring. And guess what I think is the kiss of death to any fundraiser? What's the kiss of death? It is to be boring. So you got to shut up. When in doubt, shut up. My first motto is when in doubt, throw a party. My second fundraising motto is when in doubt, shut up, and let the other person do the talking. So advice visits, terrific strategy. And then you can have small socials. You know, a board member host, just like my porch parties, free. There's no ask, but you are making friends. Making friends. And here is this is again a very important slide, because if you have a tour or a social event, ask people to fill out this follow-up card so that you get permission to email them. Very important. And then, you know, I love tours. In fact, I would like to, I need to do some articles on tours, because I think tours are a powerful way to get board members actively hosting tours for their organization. And then, you know, board members can always do the thank you phone calls. So what we're training board members to do is to sneeze, to invite conversation, then to invite participation or a tour or some activity. They can have an advice visit first, and then they can invite somebody to a small social. Then they can invite them for the tour, And at that point, you should find out what your person, if your person would do all that with you, find out what they are interested in doing and what kind of steps you should take to zero in on their specific interest area. It could be if you run a preschool arts program, it could be they're interested in children or art or daycare. You don't know. And so you have to find out what they're interested in. So I only have a couple more minutes, and I'm surprised I was able to go through 75 slides in this amount of time. But I just want to tell you that there are a lot of people listening to this call who could make a huge difference in the world. And I want to challenge you that you did not spend this hour, and I did not spend this hour in vain. I want to challenge you that you take some of this material and you run with it, and you put it to work, and you use it to make a difference in your organization, because you can make a shift. Remember, you can't change them, but you can change you. So go to my website and pull down some of these free tools. I would love for you to access them and get what you need. Now, I've got a couple minutes for questions. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, thank you so much, Gail, for everything. We have time for 2 or 3 questions. One of the most recent ones is, what level gift do you recommend board members to start making these calls to donors?
That's a great question. Penelope Burke says that you cannot do a cutoff. She says you have to call everybody, because she says that within your smaller donor list, you've got some major donors who are sleepers, and if you don't give them the special treatment, they're going to stay there. She says you've already got all the prospects you need. They're in your small donor list, and you don't know who they are. So I don't recommend a cutoff. I say everybody. Practically speaking, I would start with the large ones, but I'd try to do everybody.
Great. From step 1, do you have any specific recommendations for if there's members of your board that when they go in they have less passion, they're either there to put it on their resume, or they want to be a cheerleader but they just don't have that drive? Do you have any specific examples that may have worked well in the past to get them engaged?
Somebody who wants to be involved but doesn't have the passion to be involved?
Correct.
Well, first of all, if they're not very passionate, they need to think twice about whether they want to spend their time in that particular area. And maybe they should maybe they like Boy Scouts rather than camping, you know. So first, I think they need to be careful about choosing something they care about. And then I think that if you can get people in front of the work at hand, you know, physically, if you're Meals on Wheels, physically taking meals to elderly shut-ins, everything changes. It's that mission moment I talked about earlier, getting people in front of the experience will change them forever, perhaps. And I also want to say that people, I think I'm just looking through some of these questions that people said I was going quickly on the slides, and you'll be able to get recording and the slides, hard copy, so everything will be there available for you.
Great. And one last question. It's in 2 parts. It's, how often do you think works best for having board meetings? And when they happen, how long do you think they should be, as people do get restless?
Well, my board that's statewide in North Carolina, we meet quarterly, and we meet for about from 9 until 3. And we are jam-packed with agenda items and stuff we're doing. People get restless when there are too many reports, so you have to find a way to engage people and to keep it lively and create discussions. You can break into small groups. You can interview people instead of having a report. I think that if you're trying to change the world, you need to meet more often. But if you're not trying to change the world, if you're just trying to run a facility, then maybe you don't need to meet very often. You need to have the question, why do we need to meet? Why are we here? And why do we need to be sitting around this table? What do we need to accomplish? So, you know, I think it also depends on the organization and your history and your culture. But I would love to answer some of these questions. And so when you send out the follow-up links, will you send them a link to what is the place on your website where I will answer some of these questions?
Absolutely. So we had so many great questions come in, and so we will be posting within a few days to trust.guidestar.org, and we'll pick some of the most questions asked, and Gail will answer them. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Oh, I just see all the questions. I didn't see these when I was going through. I would have loved to have taken some, but I'll get my hands on them later. Thank you, everybody, and onward for the cause. And let's make a difference in the world right now today. Goodbye. Thanks so much.